to all of you, from all of us at Mercy Flight. I'm Margie Ferentino. I'm the Executive Vice President at Mercy Flight. Been hanging around this industry since the late 70s. I'm glad I have some peers in the room that have been around just as long as me. Makes me feel better. But I wanted to welcome you and thank the Wremac for the opportunity to host this meeting, and that's really all I have to say, since everything I wanted to say about Dr. O'Brien today has been put on hold because he's not here. So have a great meeting. Again, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having us, Margie.
All right, let's get started. So Dr. O'Brien was supposed to be here today. He, if you don't know, has moved on to greener pastures in Chicago, and so was planning on being here for this meeting before resigning his seat. However, at the last meeting, he found out he had to be in Chicago even a little bit earlier, and so he asked me, number one, to remind Dr. Walters to sit in the front of the room where he belongs, and number two, he asked me, we're going to have to do nominations for a new Wremac chair. Before we do that, who is on the phone? Let's start with, are there any Wremac members on the phone? Dr. Borton? Are there, okay, anybody else on the phone?
Ron Gafford.
Thank you, Ron.
Dave Emfeld, Chautauqua County.
Chautauqua County?
Ed Major.
The state?
There's in Erie County.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Brian. That's Bruce Treepaz from Nurse Advisory.
Okay, Beth Moses and Bruce Treepaz. Any others? Okay, because Dr. O'Brien couldn't make it, we're going to skip ahead to number 10 and number 11 real quickly, and then we'll go through our agenda items. Nominations for Wremac vice chair or regular chairman. Are there any?
Jason Borden.
Is a nomination for Jason Borden.
I second that.
I respectfully decline.
Okay. Dr. Borden says if nominated, he will not run. If elected, he will not serve. Well, we will leave nominations open through the summer. And then we will vote on the remaining nominations when we come back for our first meeting after the summer. We're going to need an interim Wremac chairman between now and then.
I nominate Dr. Clemency.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I hate you all. All right, let's go through the agenda. CMAC, SEMSCO, I'm sorry, you guys have read the minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, or clarifications needed for the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. CMAC SEMSCO report. Dr. Walters, would you like to speak to what's new in Albany?
You know what? I'm going to maybe defer to someone. I wasn't there at the last meeting. I was at another conference.
Ron's on the phone.
Oh, Ron.
Ron, can you give us an update?
Yeah. The CC to paramedic bridge, a lot of progress has been made. To remind everybody that the CCs that are waiting for this should still stay current and not anticipate taking a bridge. We can't have their cards expire. The new CME program is within a month or so being rolled out. There's been a lot of bad paperwork from CME coordinators coming into the state, so we're going to remind everybody to sign off on those, including the medical director sign-offs. The comment period ended for the state register change to lower the age for EMT down to 17. So we're waiting to see if there are any substantive comments about that. Obviously, they're having a lot of staffing issues. They've got several people out on medical, several retirements. Let's see here. They did affirm the Nassau County's Wremac suspending ALS privileges of an agency down there. I think that was discussed in a previous meeting. I'm just reading through here, seeing anything's pertinent for Wremac. There was no change in the state EMS budget, and we believe their cash ceiling has remained the same, which, if you're not aware, they get X amount of dollars, but they're only allowed to spend, basically 4/5 of that. So, but that all stayed the same as it was last year. And then apparently EMSC is in the process of surveying hospitals to see if they have transfer agreements in place with ambulance services, because those are required under 405 regulations. And that's probably everything I can think of for Wremac. The protocols are in for final revision. I've been emailing with Andy Johnson and Mike Daly, because Mike said they were going to send it out for one last ditch comment period by the end of July, I believe he said, but nothing's come out yet. So I believe you should be seeing those come out to us within the next couple of days, hopefully. But they're pretty much done. EMSC spent a lot of time making changes, and they were kind of painful, probably about an hour of that meeting. But they're pretty much done. They're very similar to the collaboratives. Probably very few differences, I'm guessing. I have not seen them myself. And I think that's about it, Brian.
Thank you very much. Anyone have anything else to add about CMAC Thumbscope? Michael,
Hey,
go ahead.
Ron, do they have a potential date for the go live for the CC Bridge, CC to Paramedic Bridge?
I was asked to a special meeting between Andy Johnson and Northwell Health, who is the contractor doing it. All of pretty much the didactic stuff is done. The gap analysis, so there was quite a bit of material that was not in the current CC curriculum that is in the paramedic curriculum. But as far as skills go, there was only a few differences. But they said they expect it by the end of the year, and they expect the bridge class to last about a year, even though much of it is online.
Okay. There is no Wremac Chairman report. Beth Moses, Trauma Advisory Committee.
Hello. The RTEC meeting was held yesterday, June 29th. The following items were discussed. Missed report and the importance of pre-notification as soon as possible. Those with long-distance transports and significant changes in patient condition should provide an update within 10 to 15 minutes out. STAC update. New New York State 504.45 trauma regulations were put in place, and quarterly reporting requirements were discussed, as well as concerns on how to meet these requirements. There's a lot of problems there. Trauma center updates. Both trauma centers were successfully reviewed in March. Oshai Children's Hospital is also in the process of hiring a new trauma program manager. We should hear something in about 2 weeks. And data for trauma from both facilities was shared. QI, TI. The trauma centers are now required to participate in the National Trauma Quality Improvement Program. We call it TQIP. A subgroup of 25 adult trauma centers in New York are also currently looking at severe TBI outcomes. The RTAC is looking for TI project suggestions from members of the RTAC. We did have one suggestion to look at outcomes of patients who received pre-hospital notification versus those cases that had no pre-notification. Any topic ideas that anybody has, please submit them to Linda Schwab or to Laura Stutz. Trauma education. 1,600 people have been trained in Stop the Bleed so far that we know of in the region, but there are a lot of other needs out there. We did a T-CAR and a P-CAR, which is trauma resuscitation, trauma care after resuscitation, and the other one's pediatric version. Both those courses were held in the Batavia area for nurses in Rochester and Western New York. Attendance and feedback was excellent. We did get the rate down to about $35 a head from over $350. We're going to repeat those courses again in 2019 if the grant comes through. The semi-annual trauma Trauma Reach Conference is being planned for the spring of 2019. We also discussed TXA and blood transfusion updates on the pre-hospital side, and our next meeting is October 10th.
All right, any questions for Beth? Nurse Advisory Committee report, Bruce Trepez.
Hello there. From the Nurse Advisory, one of the topics of discussion has always been is the handoff communication and the pre-hospital report. Fortunately enough for us, the RTEC has done the surveys, communication surveys last year and looking to roll out the MIS. So one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we help with the MIS program, because it probably will help with a lot of that miscommunication or lack of communication that we have between the nurses, the doctors, and the pre-hospital staff. Currently looking for other suggestions or ideas to anything else that we want to look at. I guess besides making the nurses be nice and get blood transfusions, we're open up any suggestions. Send them to me or the interim chair, and they'll kind of let me know what else we want to look at. Next meeting will be scheduled, it'll be the 12th of September.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Program agency, any questions for Bruce? Program agency reports, Rob.
Good afternoon. We've had some classes. The ones I want to kind of point out, tomorrow night at the County Training Center here in Genesee, there's a Safe Talk class. We've done some Stop the Bleeds, one last night at a church, and Niagara Wheatfield I'm doing on Friday for their nurses up there. A bunch of EMT classes through NTRIP, NU, COVA I think's got one going on right now, and East Shelby have all reached out, as well as the city of Batavia. I will be getting everything posted on the website, the Lake Plains website, here by the end of the week. Byron Rescue, they're requesting to go from basic level to advanced. They're a transporting agency. Wendellville's requesting to add BLS CPAP. Cambria Fire's requesting a medical director change from Dr. Brown to Dr. Klementowski. I recently received a request for Dr. Ennis to take over Darien Lake from Dr. Conley, which also brings up the fact that Dr. Conley is leaving the area. So what we are actually requesting right now is interim permission to have Dr. Peterson take over while I gather the paperwork for the Genesee County region to change that medical director. We're working diligently with the agencies to push credentialing to get in by June 30th, as the deadline is very quickly approaching. Looking to host a CLI class probably mid-October, be located in Niagara County. As soon as I get information on that, we'll push that out. If nobody is fully aware, the Western Regional Data Repository is up and running. I am collecting live data currently. Right now, that's with one agency. As it stands, AMR is actually pushing their historical data to the state, and next week we should be turning on the switch for them to start receiving live data to that repository. So that is all up and running. It seems to be running fairly smoothly right now as data comes in, and then it's actually transferring the state pretty seamlessly. But if we encounter problems, we'll be there to probably take care of them. The one thing that I wasn't really mentioned, the advanced protocols were actually approved for the changes at the CMAC in SEMSCO. So hopefully those go into effect in January, and we're getting some of that information out. Dr. Greenberg mentioned at our program agency meeting that he's going to be doing a lot of going around the state, and we actually just received a phone call today that he'll be in this area on next Wednesday as he's coming to our office. So just be on the aware that he's on the roundabout. He's a great guy. Met him. I think if he can do what he says he'll do, or at least half of what he can do, I think he'll be very good for the state. That's all I have.
Just two questions. Dr. Klementowski and Dr. Peterson. Are they medical directors currently?
Yes, Dr. Peterson is actually, was out of South Buffalo Mercy.
That Dr. Peterson, okay.
Yes, and Clementowski's was St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's.
Agencies there?
I'm sorry?
Did they have agencies before?
Dr. Clementowski?
Yeah.
I don't know if he has or hasn't, but he has been approved to do other agencies currently.
That's what I'm saying, so yeah. So
Yeah, he has some
he's
under him
currently
already,
approved,
yes.
right. And Dr. Peterson? Okay.
As far as I know.
Has
I-
agencies right now or no?
I don't know if he currently has any agencies. I don't know if he's been doing any, do you know, Emily?
He doesn't have any under him right now.
Okay. All right. And so he's gonna take over Genesee County? Okay. With your help?
Sure.
Okay. Good enough. All right. Any questions for Lake Plains? STEMS, Alicia?
We've been, attending our standard meetings that we usually attend. We held our spring training conference and had around 200 providers attend back in March. We've been transitioning to accept Narcan data through the HIDA OD map. So we are in the process of having our agencies sign up through our agency code on OD map. We held a Stop the Bleed Day with Brian Wilcox from Mercy Flight as the instructor in celebration of National Stop the Bleed Day, and we trained about 25 people in multiple sessions throughout the day. We held an ITLS refresher course April 15th. We held Safe Talk, which is a suicide, connects people with suicide first aid resources at our building on May 17th. For EMS week, we were at WCA for their award ceremony. We had cookouts at OGH as well as Jones. We've held quite a few Narcan trainings in the past few months, and we've, since the last meeting, we've trained 155 people and distributed 178 kits. We were awarded the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Utilities Service Distance Learning and Telemedicine Grant, which allows us to have a distance learning hub at our new site in our boardroom and our training center, as well as 3 satellite sites on the Seneca Nation, Gary Volunteer Fire Department, and Cuba Ambulance Service. We just finished the installation of the equipment last week, so we're looking forward to start utilizing this equipment for training. We also applied for a second round of funding to expand to 3 more sites, which would be the Seneca Nation in Irving, West Valley in Cattaraugus County, and Jones Memorial Hospital in Wellsville. Upcoming, we have a PALS refresher course tonight. Talk Saves Lives, which is a suicide prevention training tonight and Friday. We are currently collecting all our credentialing paperwork, and we are well on our way to being 100% compliant by the deadline. We have the AEMT class is testing tomorrow. We have, I think, 23 people that will be testing tomorrow. We are planning our open house at our new building for Tuesday, July 17th. We have not yet sent out the invitations, but we will be doing that soon. We're planning on having a CIU course on October 6th in Olean and Jamestown. We have a leadership training, 3 leadership trainings coming up in October. They would be on conflict resolution, team dynamics, and stress management. Various Narcan trainings, and we just set our date for our conference next year, which will be April 26th and 27th.
Any questions for STEMS? UBMD, Scott?
The report is included in the packet. Several notices and training announcements have been promulgated since the previous meeting. The conference was held on April 20th and 21st. It was our strongest attendance that we've had. And we're looking forward to next year. We have a different venue that's going to allow us to give us the space to get into vendors, and if we need to do breakout sessions and things like that, we're excited to have that opportunity afforded to us through the new venue. The credentialing, I can't report such rosy things about credentialing in the Wyoming area region. We only have 29% of our, or 26% of our services that have actually submitted so far, and that's 29 services altogether. So 26% is 29 services. With the use of the portal, everything is automated in here. So services that have not submitted at 12:01 a.m. on July 1st, they're going to get a notice stating that they are offline from the portal. There's rules that are automatically in there, so it's just going to run its system check at midnight like it does every night, and the notices are going to go out. I know there's more discussion on this later on in the meeting today, but so this is a little bit of a problem. Again, it seems to be every year with us, and it's just kind of chasing people around, reminding, sent reminder notices. We can only do so much. And quite frankly, those who have submitted, the feedback has really been exceptionally positive. It is so incredibly easy. All the information's there. All they have to do is hit the submit button if they entered the training when they did it. So it really couldn't be any easier. So this is just a matter of trying to encourage people to be compliant and getting them to actually do it. So stay tuned. With that being said, the only other thing that I want to report that isn't already in my report is that the UBMD EMS division site is actually going through a major revision right now, and we're going to be seeing some changes on that. And what we're really trying to do is we're trying to integrate our website with the portal, with everything else that goes on in the region, so that it's really just a one source web page. And it shouldn't be up to providers to try to figure out, do I go to a council's website for this? Do I go to the Wremac website for that? Do I go to the UBMD EMS division? We're trying to drive everything through our division so that it can be that one-stop shop. And if there's a topic that you want information on, that you just go to our site, you research that topic, and then our site will take you to wherever it needs to for that particular topic. So it's not up to the provider to try to figure out which entity is responsible for whatever they're looking for. So that is a more difficult thing than it probably sounds like, because EMS just has a lot of players. So with that being said, everything else is included in our action items that have already been included in the agenda.
Thank you. Any questions for any of the program agencies? Cloud of protocols, Dr. Walters.
I don't think there's any big updates. There have been some minor changes discussed at the AMT level that will be coming around, and also just the updating the state BLS protocols to be more in line with the collaborative protocols. And I believe the plan is for those to be approved in September. Is that the goal? So more to come on that, but nothing significant right now.
Thank you. Anything to add on collaborative protocols? QI, Alex is not here. He has no report. Don, do you have anything? Cardiac arrest field termination ad hoc committee?
Unfortunately, we don't not have a policy yet. However, thank you to Dr. Walters, Brian Brenner, and Scott, who have been very diligently working on some information and so forth. We'll be cycling back with a hopefully another meeting, and hopefully have something in one way, shape, or form. I think Dr. Walters will hold us to 10 points.
Okay.
We'll field terminate one way or another, Doctor.
Eventually, ad hoc committee will be terminated. Old business, Wremac policy review, pediatric skills and CME. Do we probably want to wait until the CMAC finishes what they're doing for the AMT level before we move on this?
I didn't think there was any dialogue regarding pediatric skills. I thought it was all based around chest decompression.
That was the big one.
That's the AEM too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was supposed to be my get out of jail free card, because I don't know what Mike did with this one. You kind of ruined it for me there. Thanks. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put it off anyway, because I don't know what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And
Fair enough.
we will tackle this afterwards. I'll do it over the summer if it's obvious. Otherwise, if it's not obvious to me what needs to be done after we review it, then we'll push it off till the next Wremac meeting. Taser barb removal, though, that I do know the answer to.
We were talking about, was there discussion about whether AMTs had to take the tails?
That's what I
That's
thought.
the discussion.
That's what I thought.
Yes, that was
in our
the
PPA policy now, I think that's going to be.
If you can do this action item, I'm happy to do it. I'm not prepared for it, but if you know the answers. happy to do it.
I thought that was where the conversation started.
And we don't currently have that requirement on our AEMT skill sheet for the Wremac. So I think if we don't do anything, we're okay.
Yeah. Why don't we come back to this? Okay, we'll hold off on this for a second. We'll move ahead to taser barb removal. The draft policy was put out. The only other recommendation we got from Beth Moses on behalf of the Tribe Advisory Committee was the very last sentence of the procedure section says, clean the wound with gauze, with water or saline if required, and apply a bandage to each site. She's recommending we remove the words if required. There's two widths there, that's kind of awkward. Do we want to say clean the wound with gauze and water or saline and apply a bandage to each site? Or how about just clean the wound as appropriate and just leave it at that?
Yeah, clean and dress.
Clean and dress as appropriate? Does that leave us enough room to use?
Yes.
Is that okay with you, Beth?
It's fine with me, it just, the sentence to me was awkward, and I just thought it was weird.
I agree. There's too many widths in there also. So the last line of the procedure is going to say, clean and dress the wound as appropriate. Is there a motion to accept this policy with that addition?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Essie. Thank you, Dr. Walters, for your second. Any other discussion?
There are just, there's a couple other little
Yeah.
minor proofreading things that someone emailed to me.
Okay.
That aren't any substantial changes to the content, so, if there's no objection, we'll just make the proofreading changes.
Sure.
If this motion passes.
I'm comfortable with that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Remac Leadership Retreat. Who is going to, is anyone going to speak to that? Okay. Reminder, a skills credentialing deadline is June 30th at 11:59 p.m. I am honestly not sure where Dr. O'Brien left off with the program agencies and the leadership retreat, and so I'd like to circle back with them in the next couple weeks, and Brian and others.
We had a brief meeting 3 meetings ago.
Okay.
It was a pre-meeting before the Wremac meeting. The discussion was not about the leadership concepts that we originally approached. It kind of shifted course and became more of a discussion about REMSCO and program agency collaboration. So it's probably a clean slate, and we can.
All right. Let's. Why don't we all circle back offline and try to figure out where that needs to continue or not, and if we can just drop it off the agenda in the future or make it into what it needs to be. One or the other. Pediatric skills and CME, Brian, are you ready?
I'm not sure. I
No?
guess why don't we talk to,
I think we just we'll put this off till after the summer. Again, Mike O'Brien apologizes. He intended to be here. At the very last minute, he was given a little bait and switch with his new job. New business, Remac skills modifications. So this is one of the things that happened in the last 2 years, in my mind at least, was that there was often shifting guidance from the Remac to the program agencies about how actually to deal with people that were delinquent with their skills requirements. And I think that put some of the program agencies, or all the program agencies, kind of in a bad position. And so it was my goal to offer a suggestion whereby we would have a very clear guidance as to what would happen for agencies that are delinquent. And so the proposal is, that was emailed to the membership, is 2 parts. One is simply the list of kind of what happens when you don't fill the stuff out. That's easy. So July 1st, if a provider is not up to date with the program agency, however the program agency operationalizes that, they may not perform any BLS or ALS skill that requires Remac approval. And then there would be a reminder at July 15th And then August 1st, then your agency's not recognized at all. The other piece of this, though, is the BLSFRs. And we've had a long discussion.
Can I just ask a question
Go ahead.
on that first before we move on?
Yeah.
So you're saying if they don't submit by July 1st, they cannot perform any skill that requires Wremac approval?
Right.
So what does that mean exactly?
So okay, yeah, let me speak to all this in 2 more seconds and see if I make the answer clear. I think there's been some gray area as to where exactly, in terms of BLS providers, the Wremac has the oversight to say you can do this and this, or you can't do that. And I think I think that level is the grayest among BLSFRs. Right, BLSFRs, a lot of them don't even have some of the same requirements that transport agencies have. And our ability to tell them they can or cannot practice in certain areas, I think, is nebulous at best. And so I don't think it's in our best interest to be focusing on providers who are doing skills that are not very clearly within our oversight and very clearly in an area where we can tell them they can or cannot practice, which is different than if a provider does something grossly inappropriate. And so when you take a look at a BLS agency, I think if you're a BLS agency, I think you should do provider skills. I think your medical director has the ability to direct you and make you do provider skills. But I think that's probably not something the Wremac should spend their time chasing after. Because if they're not doing it, it's unclear that we've got the full authority to do anything about that. Unless that BLSFR agency is doing the other skills that we credential them to do. So for instance, you need Wremac approval to give albuterol. That then, to me, is very clearly within the purview of the Wremac to say, if you are not doing the things you need to do in our area, you cannot do these extra things. That to me is clear. It is unclear to me that we can tell you you can't practice on the most basic EMT level without any of those additions. And so I think from my perspective, I think as we go forward with provider privileging and what we've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, is I think we should be focusing on the areas where the Wremac has very clear authority, and I think we should be following up on those and mandating that that's done. And in the areas where we have less clear authority, I think those are the areas that we perhaps should back off a little bit.
So what about for an ALS provider then, what are you saying?
So an ALS provider who does not do skills cannot do anything that they need to be credentialed by the Wremac to do. So that would be all ALS skills, and that would be all BLS plus skills, for lack of a better word. So that person can still do CPR, but they can't do albuterol, for instance. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll be the bad guy.
Please.
I mean, I sure will.
Please.
I think it's a step back. I think we've had this debate over BLSFR agencies for a while, and I think that the standard of care when you call 911 and someone responds, I think that the expectation, whether you're a first response agency or you're an ambulance agency, the expectation of an EMT, a BLS provider when they show up, is the same. I think the standard of care is the same, and therefore I think that just they should be held to the same level. The question always comes up: does the Wremac have authority over BLSFRs? And Ed, you're on the line, so I'm going to put you on the spot, but I always maintain the position that if you look at New York State Public Health Law, Article 30, Section 3004, I'm sorry, 3000, it's 3011. Nope, it's not. I lied again. It is 3004-A. It says Regional Emergency Medical Advisory Committees, REMACs, shall develop policies, procedures, and triage, treatment, transport protocols. So not just protocols, but we have the ability, legal, I think, purview, to not even can develop policies and procedures, but shall develop policies and procedures, number one. And so that's in the law. Then when you further, that's delineated by Bureau of EMS Policy 1105, where it talks about the REMAC, and there's several sections that I'll just read. That the objectives, following goals are for REMAC: to provide medical leadership, education, guidance, quality assurance, and appropriate remediation to all participants in the regional EMS system. That would include BLSFRs. To educate and credential New York State certified EMS pre-hospital care providers, which BLSFR EMTs are. may develop policies and procedures, I'm skipping around there, just highlighting the relevant sections, may develop policies and procedures to optimize medical control of all pre-hospital patient care activities for all EMS services providing care within its region. Such policies and procedures shall include, but are not limited to, and if you skip down several bullet points, the initial credentialing and continuing medical and educational qualifications for all pre-hospital care providers in the region. So reading those sections there, I think it's pretty clear that we do have authority over BLSFRs, and I think that argument that the Wremac doesn't regulate BLSFRs, I think is null and void. And Ed, I will put you on the spot now. I know that the Bureau always takes the stance that you do not regulate BLSFR agencies. However, I think it is also clear in Part 800 that the Bureau does regulate certified EMS providers at all levels, correct?
Yeah, that is, you are correct, Brian, with the fact that, from a certified provider standpoint, we do regulate those, clearly defined. As far as BLS first response agencies, we give a guidance document as to what their requirements are, what they should have. We have a policy statement on what you need to do to become a BLS first response agency with an agency code. However, it is not, there isn't nothing in the in the law that clearly defines that we have authority over those particular agencies, and certainly we don't have time, resources, or energy to follow through on any inspection and that kind of. We don't have inspections. We don't have agency level responsibilities. Now, certainly, as they are part of the system. If there was an active investigation regarding a provider, regarding an agency, we would certainly, we take that on and investigate it. But the fact is that technically, BLS first response agencies are not defined in the regulations of the law. So that's sort of a hard thing to. They're within the system, but they're not clearly defined. We do have a policy statement that addresses. If somebody puts forth a BLS first response application and they want to seek funding, there are certain things that they have to provide to the department to ensure that they are meeting the system requirements and meeting Bureau's policy statement.
So I think Brian, I think this sort of kind of reflects I think what Ed said, right? It's the state is providing what the expectation is. But then, in many respects, BLSFRs, until there's a problem, are kind of left to their own reconnaissance to self-police themselves and kind of do their own thing. Brian?
Just an observation. I think we need to draw a distinction between BLSFR and BLSFR with an agency code. Because the BLSFRs that have the agency codes, I believe, and repeated for Ed, but I believe that on a REMSCO's recommendation to the Bureau will withdraw that agency code and withdraw the funding. And with the withdrawal of funding, there creates consequence. And I think that the REMSCOs, at least for this Wremac, would be responsive to a Wremac recommendation that code be withdrawn because of failure to comply with system expectations. So maybe you want to draw a distinction between those that obtain funding and those that do not.
I think the other argument, we're throwing in BLSFRs into the mix, but really our PPA policy, right, our provider privilege application and annual credentialing skills, is really a policy that governs the provider. Right? Those are things that the provider has to do to be online. I don't think we should be mixing it because that provider happens to work for a BLSFR agency. Right? We're talking about the standard credentialing policy for a basic EMT. That standard should be the same.
So I guess the question is, if a BLS EMT does not do it, what happens?
We've been through this issue before. Right. Yes, the PPA does establish a provider requirement, but no provider individually has a mechanism to report. It's only through their agency. So an individual provider now becomes offline because an agency doesn't report, even though that provider is compliant.
Right.
If we're going to head in that direction, that's great, but we should have an individual mechanism for reporting so the individual provider can be online and it's not the agency's responsibility or the agency's ability. For the whole individual responsible, at least they can do something.
So what are you recommending?
I don't.
Okay. I mean, I think this is our challenge, right? I mean, I firmly believe we should have a position, and in that position we should be willing to go to the nth degree to enforce. And I think right now, we have a more expansive position that we have not clearly enforced. And so my preference, and this is mine alone, would be to have something that is less expansive, but very clearly enforceable with very clear consequences, rather than something that's larger but still somewhat nebulous as it's been done.
Just a quick question, I mean, not that I'm a bandwagon guy, but what do the other regions do?
All over the place. It's all over the place. To the best of my understanding, and please other people correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, there are some in New York State that have a tighter credentialing systems than us. I would think of Rochester and Monroe. And I think there are some areas that are the Wild West. I think all of us, when we began this provider privileging adventure 6-7 years ago, thought that by now most of the state would have something like this. And that, to my best of my knowledge, was not the case for lots of areas.
So
Brian, if I recall correctly, Melrose does not require BLS credentialing. They only surface on AEMT or paramedic level.
Okay, thank you.
I did a little research on it. I'll try to find that email that I summarized across the state. We did have a big meeting here in our regional office with Dr. Young and a good group of the program agency medical directors at the time. And everybody had varying opinions at that time also.
So, Brian, you said that we have a policy that's not being enforced, and I think if we have a policy that's not being enforced, one, I think we have to look at the issues of why it's not being enforced, and we need to do a better job of policing it and enforcing it, number one. And number two, as a medical director who has enforced that policy and made all their BLSFRs agencies comply with that policy, I take exception to the notion that we are not enforcing that policy. I think it's not being enforced uniformly throughout the region, but I think that that is a failure of different parts of the system that we should look at, not change the policy because it's difficult to enforce and we haven't done it yet. I think that that's taking a step
But
backwards.
who would enforce it, Brian? Who's the Wremac police, I think is the problem.
Medical directors have to be.
Oh, so I totally agree with you. So I agree, but I think it's different than the Wremac.
But I will come back and argue Article 30 and the Bureau policy, and there's even sections of.
Well, I mean, the last thing we want to do is create a
but-
public health crisis by taking all these BLS agencies offline. That's not our purpose. But if we collectively as a body turn a blind eye to this and do nothing, we lose our credibility and standing within our communities. So we have to do something. In the effort of moving this off where we are now, I think policing the credentialing, limiting them to not doing albuterol, epi, 12 leads, all of the more advanced skills, I think that's probably where we need to start. I think that's movement, it's action, and we don't manufacture a public health crisis. That's my 2 cents.
Yes?
And what happens if they do it anyways?
Well, no, so that's easy. I mean, the state, that I think, correct me wrong, Ed, but I mean, I think that's a place where the state would back us. Ed, right?
Yeah, we did indicate that previously, yeah.
If specifically providers are doing things that need Wremac approval to do, then they are practicing outside of their scope of practice in that case. That's very clear.
The state doesn't have the staff, the police.
Yeah, correct interpretation.
I mean, if complaints are filed in all those instances, they don't have the staff right now to investigate and police that.
So,
I think that's a fairly narrow thing that they would.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an area I think where it's very clear that if we have given you authority to do a special skill that you would not be able to do without Wremac credentialing, then we can take that away too. Scott?
Just a quick point. If somebody has a state DMS code in their BLSFR that does not qualify them as a BLS service, that would be defined in public health law. That state code, from what I understand, from many dealings with previously, actually is for funding purposes only, for the CME-based recertification program and a couple of other bits. It does not qualify them as an EMS service, so I'm not sure that the assertion that because they have a state code makes them an EMS service when their classification is BLSFR. That's why New York State does not regulate them, because they are not an EMS service, number one. So, you know, the second part to this is keep in mind, many of the things that when they're filing AED stuff, when they're filing EPI stuff, those are notices of intent. They are not, it's not viewed the same way that a BLS transporting service would look at it from you have to have a medical director, you have to have an EHCP, which is different than a medical director. It could be a hospital CEO that could be signing that notice of intent. So there are definitely differences when we're talking about BLS transporting services versus BLS FR services. Even though there are some things that parallel, those items that parallel are actually different things within the eyes of the state, within the eyes of the law, and that's been the experience. So that's the only thing I offer in the conversation.
Brian? Just back to what is the consequence, and I think you look to the money, like Scott said. If they don't have an agency code, they can't participate in the CME-based certification program, and they can't get training dollars. That right there is a consequence. Focus on the agencies that have the codes. The other ones that don't require medical direction, they don't require Wremac authorization, they're not providing transport, they're first aid agencies. I mean, they have EMT cards, they're providing first aid skills, presumably they're not carrying anything that requires medical direction or a prescription. The Bureau's pretty much said it's not going to enforce it. Why don't we just deal with the ones that have said to some degree they're serious, they want to be part of the EMS system, they want the education, they want the funding, and let that be the consequence.
But Ed, doesn't, when agency, a BLSFR, don't they, when they submit to the state, don't they have to agree to participate in the regional 911 system and follow the Wremac guidelines? Isn't that part of the application process? Would they attest to it?
They have to have a participation agreement with a transporting agency. That's one of the requirements. The other requirements is that they meet certain equipment requirements. And I can certainly give you the list here. It kind of goes down, through, the guidelines are, it talks about the purpose, it talks about the system. System integration is certainly, a part of it. They go through there's a ton of stuff to it. They should participate in, QA, QI, treatment protocols, resources to use, their medical training. I don't know where it says medical director. I gotta look for that. But it does talk about participation agreement with a transporting agreement, as I said, unified command. It goes through some operational stuff, which includes mutual aid, including written policies, statewide BLS protocols, defibrillation, and then it goes through the equipment list. You just do a search to see if medical director believes that we do require I'll search through it about I don't think it mentions Wremac approvals in here.
Well, here's look at that. Again, the focus of this proposed change is not to stop them from doing skills, but it's to put it back on their medical director, who is really, I think, the only very clearly delineated medical authority for the agency. So it says, while it is the expectation of the Wremac that all providers in BLSFR agencies will perform annual skills demonstration, reporting those annual skills demonstrations and other required credentials to the local program agency would no longer be required. Agency medical directors reserve the right to mandate that their agencies report to their program agencies, report annual skills demonstration certifications, and or provide rosters to the local program agency. However, it will be up to each medical director to impose and monitor restrictions / withdraw medical oversight for non-compliance, etc. Program agencies will no longer report BLSFR compliance to the Wremac. So you can still, your agency still does it. Like my agency, if I have a BLSFR, I can say, I want them still as the medical director to do this. This could be my arrangement. I just think if we try to police everything and we're not following through, it weakens our position on the things that we do have authority on.
So let's just back up for a second.
Yeah.
Because I think So you're getting stuck on the fact, saying, does the Wremac have the authority to take an agency offline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, let's just go back to the, not this.
No, a BLSFR agency or a BLSFR provider.
Right, can I just make a quick
Go ahead.
suggestion?
Yeah, go.
You know, I think we've tried to troubleshoot and kind of walk through brainstorming in these meetings before, and it turns out to really take a long time and we don't end up coming to a solution. And I suggest that this is the first time that most of us have seen this document, that we sit on it over the summer and work in a smaller group to kind of hash out the details rather than try to work in front of this, in front of the whole group today.
So what do we want in the meantime, what, because July 1st is coming? And we missed our last one. So we need to, if that's the direction, I'm okay with that. We need very clear direction to our program agencies as to what they should be doing in the coming.
I'm suggesting we don't make a change 2 weeks before before July 1st comes, is what I'm suggesting. So I'm proposing that we end this discussion now, leave things the way they were last year.
So do the three program agencies all clearly understand what they did last year and what the expectations of the Wremac would be for them for the July 1st deadline?
It would be no different than last year. Trying to change this
Right,
before the end of the
but
month.
last year was sort of a moving deadline.
Right, that's right.
All three of you guys are on the same page as to what you need to do, how you need to give feedback to your agencies as of last year, and all three of you will do it the same way.
So there's two things in here. There's the BLSFR discussion and then there's the letters. I think they're two different things. So this is the BLSFR discussion that we're having right now.
Okay, so, but
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, so what Brian is asking is, do we understand what to do? And I think that's, I mean, these letters and the steps that are here, we have not had this previously. And that.
Or we tried to reconstruct them after the fact.
I was gonna say, we have them.
Right. This is just,
We had letters.
we're just ending the discussion about the BLSFR first. We'll get to the letters in 10 seconds.
So if we apply, there's no motion, so we can just do what? If we apply these, so then is your proposal, Dr. Lynch, that we then use, these letters are sort of a toolkit for how to communicate to make sure that all three program agencies are doing this the same way?
Well, my proposal was that we end the BLSFR
Right,
change
yeah.
discussion. Does it need to be a motion?
No, that's not the other two.
Okay. I would make a motion that we accept the verbiage in these letters and use them as directed.
And but it's directed for ALSFR and all
Right.
transporting. So do you
So we would
want
have
that
to
to
take
apply
out
to
BLSFR.
You want that applied to everyone or only to BLSFR agencies? That's what I'm trying to figure out. You know what I mean?
Right, so we,
So we cross out this, but then do you want this to apply to all agencies or only to ALSFR and all local transport agencies? Or do you want this to apply to everybody?
so that would be,
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
that would not include BLSFR agencies, if we left it the way this is.
Right. Right, that's what
So
I'm
they're not a transport agency, right?
Right. So that's what I'm trying to, apologize for asking twice, but. So.
This year it should include the FRs, because it's a requirement for them to
Right,
report.
if we haven't unmade the BLSFRs.
Right.
So does this apply to everybody now?
And that's what we did last year,
Is what?
we included them.
Right.
So then, yes, we should.
So then
include
just,
them.
this should say all agencies. Yep.
So again, there should be no change from what was done last year. Correct. Correct.
Are these set of 3 letters, or 4 letters, is this different, or do we want to just say, we're gonna do this, or we want to say we'll do it the way we did last year? Which I think is fairly simple.
Well, this, I think, shores up the moving targets,
Right,
which is what the main problem was last year.
I think so. And I think it ensures that all 3 I think all 3 program agencies did a good job with this, but sometimes people are doing it slightly differently.
Right, because they had to.
Problematic for us.
Yeah. So my motion would be to use these letters as written for all 3 program agencies.
Does that work for do the 3 program agencies have any concerns or questions, or,
Yeah, 'cause we had a letter that we brought you last year that you all approved.
okay?
And I mean, like this first one, maybe I'm not reading it right, but it says the Wremac has received your annual summary. And it says, you're receiving this notice because you did not submit your annual summary. So, I mean, I got these this morning, I haven't had a chance to prove them. Again, we're 2 weeks out. We have letters that were approved last year that we brought you that come from the medical directors. So
Right, this is an effort to try to standardize it across the region.
I brought them here, the letters that we use.
Is everyone using the letters that Donna wrote?
We shared them with everybody.
Is everyone using the letters Donna wrote?
I have no letters.
So no. So it sounds like we need to kick these letters back quickly to a proofreading committee over the next week to firm them up before they get sent out at the end of the month.
How about this? No, I'll go to Brian second. How about,
I don't need the letters, so I'm not really worried.
okay, good.
Right, but we're trying to craft a letter that works for the entire region.
How about the three program agencies get together? So I think what I'm hearing from the group is, number one, the BLSFR, a change in that should not happen at this point. I think the second issue is that our bigger question is not how to manage. We're not looking to micromanage the program agencies. We're trying to make sure they do it the same way, and that we have a single approach. Can the three program agencies get together, and because we'll be in summer rules at this point, and just come back to me with what our common approach is to feedback to the agencies? And I'm honestly, as long as it's nothing totally wacky, I'm totally comfortable with whatever you guys figure out. I just want to make sure that I don't have like one agency in Southern Erie looking across a county border at another agency, and there's different approaches, or up north. I think we just want it all to be the same. So that's my only concern.
I'm not really one having deja vu. I feel like we have the same discussion every year.
Right, and it keeps
I
happening.
don't understand. I don't understand why we adopt a policy, then we come back, and the next year we say, well, let's change the policy because it's June this year again. And then I swear we've approved letters before and looked at letters that the program agencies have written. Scott, right?
They've been different every year.
Right.
And I think that, I just caution us about, we've set a standard, I caution us about, going back on that standard in the future for BLSFRs or for any agency. And, we just need to do this and enforce it for once, and stop changing the policy, I think, quite honestly. And I'm not, we can have a discussion if there's things in the policy that need to be changed, but it seems silly that we have the same issue every single year.
I don't disagree with that, but still no one's answered what enforcement actually looks like.
Right, so, I'm
what's
going to answer that question.
Okay.
So we keep stumbling over this block of, can the Wremac take an agency offline, right? Is that our question?
Tell me what enforcement is. Tell me what steps that Wremac and the program agency
So,
take.
at, not this past CMAX SAMSCO, but the one before, there was a discussion about, it was Nassau County took an agency offline, right? And Dr. Bart actually chaired the review of that because they appealed to the CMAC and the SAMSCO about that. And there was no discussion about whether the Wremac had the authority to take them offline. The discussion was, did they follow their policies, and should the agency have been taken offline because of that? So initially the CMAC and SAMSCO reversed that position because they were not following their own policy. However, when it came up again and they still weren't following the policy, and this was over a QA issue or a QI submission thing, right? Which is similar to defining the same places, those same laws and same policies that I quoted you before, is exactly where it talks about credentialing. And when it came back up,
that was an ALS transport agency.
Wait, but in those sections, it does not. First of all, let's not confuse it. So first of all, they upheld the ability for Wremac to take an agency offline. Number one, first and foremost. Second of all, I think that we're talking about, when you read through these policies and that, we do have statutory authority over the providers, a BLSFR provider, to take them offline. I think we're confusing it by throwing in the BLSFR thing, but it's not. This is a provider privilege credentialing policy. The provider's offline, the provider's offline. If the agency doesn't report, then we take them offline. I don't see anywhere in here where it says we cannot do that.
So the provider continues to respond to calls, and the agency continues to respond to calls.
Then it should yank his card. We should be reported this statement because he's responding without authority. He's not online. He's responding to calls, and he's providing medical care above his scope, above basic first aid. I don't think that you can do that. This is the reason that you have.
By the way, the Nassau County agency was an ALSFR.
Okay, sorry, ALS. Sorry, ALS. Right, because there's that two-part. Yeah.
Is this a problem across the entire region, or is it just across one program or two program agencies.
I think we see it the most from the program agency that has the most providers.
I think it's because
Next month, I
yes.
just sent you the summary of the various regions and their credentialing information, especially that it occurred last year. And I will note that just for a point of reference, the BLS first response policy statement was published by Ed Bronsky in 1999. So I will recommend to our bureau director that policy should be on the target list to be updated with our staffing resources that are available to get that done. So just so you know, thank you.
Okay, so what do we want to do?
I think your suggestion about putting the program agency directors in a room, have a common themed letter with our current policy and our current stop dates is appropriate. And if I could, I'll make a motion that happens and grant you the authority to approve it once that document is produced.
Can the 3 program agencies do that within a week?
No.
We're looking at grants right now. I have a sustainability grant. This isn't gonna take precedence.
I'm gone next week.
She's on vacation.
What are you planning on doing ahead of July 1st then?
I have letters, if I need them, and they were brought to me last year. We shared them with everyone. Honest to God, I'm having her look to see where we share it with everyone. We have a letter, the medical director, it comes from the medical director, but it's through the Wremac, so that's what I'm planning on doing. And I don't honestly plan on having it. We've been working on this since March.
we're several years into this now, right? 4 years, 5 years, however many years. I mean, I don't know. If I can get 3 counties in the southern tier to comply, I don't know. I have little sympathy, I guess. Sorry. I don't. Sorry, Scott.
I mean, we met with Dr. Young, we've had this conversation, if they know where.
I think it's reasonable, and I don't think it's that time intensive to ask the 3 program agencies to have a conference call and have a common approach to this.
I'm going to Florida tomorrow for a week. I'm not going to call from Florida. I'm just not. I mean, we've been, like Brian said, we've been working on this for 4 years. Sorry.
You have other people that could delegate that on your behalf, though, Donna.
I'm not going to.
I'm going to suggest that we, after the conclusion of this meeting, that you and I and the 3 program agencies meet briefly about this issue offline, just us in a room, locked, cage match, until we come up with some suitable solution.
That's fair.
We'll offer the room, and there's only one key to the door.
Is there food in that room? Or?
There's a closet as well.
All right, let's move on.
Dr. Clemency?
Yes.
Can I make one suggestion in
Please.
your draft policy? Whenever you decide to look at this, you need to use common language regarding dates. Throughout the policy wording and all the letters, you've got some that say before a date, by a date, and after a date. That's all off by a day or two. You got to pick a common terminology when referencing all these dates in these letters and policies. It's either before July 1st, by July 1st, which means July 1st at midnight, or after July 1st. You gotta pick common wording because it's confusing for people.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. CPAP so new business, CPAP for BLS providers. What's the business to be entertained there? Someone put that on the agenda.
that goes back to,
So I think previously, I'm sorry, in the previous policy, the Bureau policy for CPAP or BLS providers, it required the training to be done by, someone remind me, was it
CIC
CLI?
paramedic.
Yes. Okay, paramedic CIC. However, that policy was changed, that Bureau policy was updated online without any notification being sent to anyone. It just magically changed. And if you reference it now, that it doesn't require that at all. So our Wremac policy on that, I think, still uses that language that was in the state policy before. We had a similar discussion for BLS 12 leads in the past. And I think the decision was, I think we left, I can find the actual, I'll pull up our policy in a second, but it basically said, I think, the medical director or his designee. It didn't say you had to be a Wremac preceptor or a CLI. It was whoever you thought knew the skill and could teach it. And I think we did that to allow some leeway for the BLS 12 lead. And thank you. So it said, there was like an asterisk in there at the bottom, and it said, course orientation demonstration must be done by a medical director or his or her designee who has been credentialed in the procedure. So my suggestion would be that to accommodate the changes in the state policy, we just rechange our policy to that line, number one. There were a couple other things I think in there too. I think there was some updating of, I think our package just needs to be tweaked and stuff to update the new state policy for this, because we have a Wremac CPAP policy online. But I don't think there's any other big issues. That was the main one, right, Scott?
yeah, just whether the region's gonna have any, any type of standard. I mean, we have a regionally approved CPAP program, I believe. And it was just a matter of establishing minimum criteria for anybody to present it, whether it could be anybody or it needed to be a preceptor or whatnot. CPAP can't be taught in BLS classes, so there's no opportunity for this to be consistently relayed to students. And so we just have to bridge the gap somehow, and as program agencies, we get a lot of phone calls, who can do it, who can't, and so we're just, I put it on the agenda following the conversation with Brian and a few others, just so we know how we're gonna handle this and how to appropriately advise the people who are covered.
So Brian, is your motion to change the CPAP policy to better be aligned with the current state policy using the language from the Wremac BLS 12 policy?
Yes.
Good, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I think that's a good way to skin that cat. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. In mass, so medical director changes. All the medical directors that are on this list meet the criteria, program agencies? Yes?
I'm sorry,
Yes.
this is a sidebar.
In number 3, all the medical directors that are put forth here meet the criteria? Meet the whatever criteria they need to meet from the policy statement? Yes? Okay. Is there a motion to address 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in mass? There's a motion. Is there a second? Is there any discussion about anything in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Any other issues from the floor?
I'd like to bring up one topic that is a burr under my saddle, and it relates to the collaborative protocols. At the CC level of care, they are authorized to use Versed in the setting of seizures as a standing order, but when they are required to do a painful procedure, the critical cares are prohibited from using Versed and the procedural sedation protocol. Is that something that we can address at the Wremac level, or do we have to take it up to the COLAB
I'm
process?
sorry, say that again?
So they can use Versed in the setting of seizures, but they cannot use Versed in the setting of procedural sedation.
On standing order.
On standing order.
I think that'd be something to bring up to the collaborative protocol.
It would have to go to the collaborative protocol group, but I think But the point is that it's in their scope. They can do it by calling med control. They just can't do it on standing order right now. But I personally don't have an issue with that being brought up to the collaborative protocol group.
Okay, will you carry that message forward on your next meeting?
It's on my list of things to do.
Any other issues? All right, last thing, so it's the summer motion. So number 11 is the summer motion. So because we have meetings widely spread out, it allows the Wremac chairman, which is me again, hooray, to approve things throughout the summer. My thought would be that I would do it like the third week of the month, of the different months. So if the program agencies have things that need to be addressed, obviously if something comes up, we always can address them, but try to cohort them together, like for about the same time the Wremac meeting would be. Unless they want to say another way to skin that cat. Is there a motion to allow the interim Wremac chair to approve things over the summer, subject to the final approval of the Wremac at the next scheduled meeting? Brian? Just a motion.
So make a motion.
Thanks.
So moved.
A second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Is there anything else, or is there alternatively a motion for adjournment? Motion for adjournment. Any objection? Have a good summer.